Hello, everyone. Happy Friday. Are you prepared for Ember's impact?
Yes.
So, friend of the channel, Scarlett, of the channel by the same name, Scarlett, send this to me. I just saw it while the countdown was going, and I had to pull it out. Y'all know how I love to pull out things. We're 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 it's a crazy day. We're discussing neopronouns, uh, xenogenders, other things that even many trans people aren't super familiar or comfortable with. So it seems like a perfect time for something weird like a giant storm, and we're joined by the the lovely Stephanie Helms. How
Over
are you,
there.
Stephanie?
No, there. I'm good.
I know.
It's not a month that ends in Ember, but apparently it's one that begins with one. So that's
Hey,
good.
hey,
Hey, hey.
yeah, yeah.
Oh, oh. And so yeah, we're here to make the topic of pronouns as boring as it should be.
Yep. Always start with weird shenanigans, I suppose. Nee brings up one of my so when my oldest came out to me as non-binary, I started looking up jokes like this, and I am a sucker for terrible jokes. Yes, I enjoy this very much.
Mm-hmm. Uh-huh.
How do you comfort a non-binary person? They're there.
Uh,
They're there.
there. That's nice.
Yeah.
Okay. Dad
Yeah.
jokes and pronouns. By the way, my pronouns are she, her, hers.
Yeah.
Suits me. And
It
really,
does.
I think that that's the point. Someone wishes to be addressed in a certain way, and address them in that way. It's a matter of courtesy more than anything else. I always get amused by people who'll, do call into one of the shows or start bitching in a side chat. So what's this? What's what? Everybody got to worry about pronouns. It's like, well, I don't know. How would you like to be addressed? Seriously, how do you? It's part of the language. There are some languages that are completely gender neutral in terms of pronouns.
Hmm. And
And
there's others
you
where
know,
even definite articles have a gender. I
indeed.
remember my first year of French, the strangest thing about it was that tables and chairs and things had genders somehow.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Humans are weird. The things humans come up with are weird, as evidenced by how we opened the show. Yeah. But yeah, everybody has pronouns. Everybody has always used pronouns, or at least all English speakers have always used pronouns. Um, I occasionally get flack for the they them thing. Oh, you can't. It's so stupid. It shows how dumb you are. You can't have a singular they. Listen, if a person is not using the proper singular second person thou, they have no room to talk. Anybody who
Hmm.
says you instead of thou is exactly as incorrect. So there.
So
I will
there.
die on this hill. Yeah. No, not
Sure, why
not
not?
really. I mean, everybody instinctively uses they in a singular sense. Who was at the door?
Often.
What did they want? Nobody even thinks about it. But they is the basic pronoun compared to what we're talking about today. Let's see. I'm going to see if I can blow up this image so I can show people what we're talking about. It doesn't wanna. It says it's blocked. I've been blocked. How dare.
That's all
Okay.
right. My keyboard stopped working for a bit, and that was freaking me out. Like minutes before the show, it's like, oh shit.
Yeah. Okay. Here's
There we
here's
go.
some of the neo pronouns. We've got a few of the traditional ones mixed in to show people how to use things. They're very, very simple. Nothing to be scared of. Once you know what they are, you just use them exactly the same way you use the pronouns that you already know about. Like, for example, Z. That's a very common one. Instead of he, you say Z. Instead of him, you say them. Instead of there, you say dear. It's just simple derivation. It's exactly this. It's substitutionary words. Now, a lot of people like to say, "Oh, these are all just made up." Well, all words are made up.
Mm-hmm.
The problem seems to be they're too recent, but they're not as recent as people might think they are. Um, in the case of these critters in particular, there's a little bit of a history behind these things. There have been many, many attempts over centuries to make English a more inclusive language, to make it less patriarchal, I suppose. There's a term for it. What is it? Primacy of shoot. How does it go? Um, bu- 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 bum. In 1542, William Lilly wrote a Latin grammar in English proclaiming the ancient doctrine called the worthiness of the genders. In modern English, it reads, the masculine gender is more worthy than the feminine, and the feminine more worthy than the neuter. Henry VIII made this the official language of, or the official grammar of all English-speaking schools. At the time, English was not considered a language worthy enough to have a grammar, but that soon changed. Within a century, the worthiness doctrine led English grammarians to promote a generic he. So they would use he, much like in ancient Israel, old Hebrew. He would also be used as gender neutral because they didn't have a dedicated gender neutral. But of course, Shakespeare didn't dig that. So when Shakespeare started writing, he specifically made a point of using they in a neutral way, and that caught on like many of the other things Shakespeare wrote. But again, this isn't about they. This is just the history of how we got to where we are. A lot of people did not dig, even in super sexist past England, with all the misogyny. They did not dig the idea of he being neutral because it's not. I think it was Robert Baker advanced the idea that by using this, or no, it was John Stuart Mill, who said that by using he as the default, you're effectively rendering half of the population invisible, and that's not cool. So there was work. There was many authors, many poets, writers of all kinds were trying to come up with ways to fix this problem. Even though they could be used in a singular fashion, a lot of people were uncomfortable with it, just as they are today. They say it feels wrong. They don't really dig it. So they came up with alternatives. Who is it? I think John Mill himself came up with I think he tried a ZE, which is very similar to XE, which is one that was on the list earlier. JW, who the hell was it? Webster, I believe, of Webster's dictionary fame, tried to get a word in, haha. There were a bunch of suggestions, some of which made it into Webster's dictionaries, even though Webster himself had already died by this point. OU, not to be confused with we. It's, 2 letters, 3 letters, so forth. Ni, whom I'm sure Johnny appreciates. Hish, V, N, Han, Un, Lay, and Ip, all within the 17 and 1800s. In 1884, American composer C.C. Converse invented thon. Thon, yes. Yeah. It actually made it into a dictionary in 1897, and then finally into Webster's second New International Dictionary in 1934, but no one cared. No one liked that one. In 1912, Chicago school superintendent invented, by invented we mean popularized, here, himmer, and hisser. There were a few different attempts to try to create pronouns out of merging him and her, Um, Ella Young came up with he-er, his-er, and him-er. It made some newspapers, but it didn't really catch on. A. Milne, the creator of Winnie the Pooh, toyed with heesh, which is he and she, with she reversed, pushed together. It didn't really work, but various attempts have been made. Bunch of other languages tried similar things, and we tried stealing words from other languages. Like, I believe it was Sweden came up with the word hen, which is kind of in the local language. Masculine was han and feminine was han, so hen just kind of fit in the middle, but that it didn't really catch on in Sweden, although in the 90s we Americans tried to appropriate it. That didn't really catch on either. So you can't really impose alternate pronouns, but
No.
that's been the effort this entire time. So now, lately, people have taken to simply declaring their pronouns and giving us, again, these are just a few. There are others. There are many, many others, but they all work the same way. You just have to ask somebody what their pronouns are. And it's not always to have a gender-neutral term. A lot of people, it's not about gender necessarily. I spoke with a person last night who prefers to use a neopronoun because of patriarchy. The whole he versus she thing really, really reinforces the patriarchy. It's built right into our language. And this person wants to take no part. And I can respect that. A lot of people may identify with one gender or another and not be non-binary or not be anything in particular, but choose a neopronoun for a completely different reason. So it's not really this scary thing with there's 87 genders and all of them have their own pronouns. No, your pronouns don't necessarily even have to be related to your gender. A person often uses pronouns as a part of gender expression. Many of us do by default. It's part of how we present who we are to the world and how we wish to be treated to others, but it doesn't have to be connected to gender. So, that's a thing to keep in mind as well.
Yeah,
All right,
just because something is not appropriate to you doesn't necessarily mean you rule the language or rule somebody else's desires as to how to be addressed. I personally have a problem with the it's thing, but that's because it was used, particularly early in transition, as a spear, as wounding words. What is it? That kind of thing.
A deliberate attempt to dehumanize.
But I do see, as you said, using that. I do see the value in using that as a way to say, okay, bring it. Go ahead. F you, I don't care. Fuck the patriarchy and get stuffed. What is it?
Yeah.
It's it. There you go. That's it. That's all it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, reclaiming things is totally valid as well. It's there's a few terms that people of my skin tone really shouldn't be saying, but other people do because they're trying to bring it back under their own control instead of having it used against them. It makes sense to me.
It's tricky,
all that kind of stuff.
And the way the language works is you can try to introduce something, but until it becomes common usage, it doesn't catch on. That's the way it goes. So if more people, if people decide, sufficient numbers of people decide that the he, she, they, them is not sufficient, then yeah, let's get creative and start using other things. And if more people adopt it, then more people adopt it and it'll become part of the language.
Yeah,
Like I
and
said, it should be boring.
exactly. It's just it's interesting bits of history, but it really isn't all that remarkable. Like, I had to dig to find that history to tell you folks, because there's just not that much to it. It's just, here they are. It's just pronouns. It's just a part of language. There's nothing to be intimidated by with the whole, oh, there's too many, I just don't understand. No, it's pretty simple. It's just a different phonic sound, a different articulation. And again, it just has to do with basic respect. The same way you would refer to a person by the pronouns that they indicate they wish to be referred to, it's exactly the same. If a person says, I prefer to be referred to as Zim, it's simple enough to just do that. Even if you don't understand why or the reasons behind it. That said, I have noticed that many people who have the little buttons with the pronouns on them, and sometimes they'll have neopronouns. If you ask them why those particular ones, they're usually happy to tell you. There isn't anything standardized about it, like why Z and not they, for example. It's they're not connected to anything. You don't have to qualify to be this or not that or anything along those lines. So there's usually a story about why they picked a particular thing. Although sometimes it's just they prefer the sound of that. But ultimately it's a rejection of the existing system because it's so binary or because it so strongly favors the patriarchy. There's a lot of factors that can go into it, but the pronouns themselves are just a part of speech.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's a very similar thing with xenogenders, which are a little weird in that they're not genders the way people normally think of genders per se. Rather than telling you, when you communicate an idea, what you're doing is you're putting a thought into an encapsulated form that has a meaning that will make sense to the receiving person. So you can communicate the whole idea in just a few sounds. It's really neat. With traditional genders, we can do that. We can say male or female, or man or woman, or boy or girl, or non-binary, or some of the other things like demigirl, or there's a whole range of terms, and most people either know what they mean or can suss them out. With xenogenders, there isn't a pre-cut form for what the gender they're trying to convey means. So they do a kind of nounification sort of thing. How that works is as a for example, a person might say, how to phrase it. Oh, I just had an example. It was. It's like it's when you feel related to things that people wouldn't normally relate with gender, but you're not saying you. I'm phrasing it badly. You're not saying you are the noun. You're saying there's something about the noun that makes you feel a certain way that is the feeling you're trying to convey. I'm very much explaining this badly, but it's it's sort of like that running joke about attack helicopters. You actually could do that in a xenogender. You're not saying you are an attack helicopter. You're saying there's something about attack helicopters that connects with what you're trying to express about gender. Like perhaps you feel like you fly, or maybe you're very aggressive. It's not super clear from just that single term by itself, but it's a part of it, I suppose. Oh,
Yeah, the attack helicopter thing. That's again very much like it's thing for me. But no, it's the sarcasm that it's like, why bother, that kind of thing. Um, and it is used by people who dislike us, to
mm-hmm.
just basically say you're inauthentic, and that's garbage. It's like, oh, let's have a conversation. Okay, I don't think you exist. All right, cool. Then see you tomorrow, or not. Mostly not. I found
Yeah.
my glasses. That's why I
Hooray,
went
progress.
invisible for a while, because it's like I can't see anything. This is really bothering me. But there they are.
Oh, can we only see you when you can see us?
And that's right. Oh, I'm
It's fascinating. But yeah, it's a little difficult. That one is a little harder to wrap your mind around because it's different from how a person normally expresses gender in a conceptualized way. But if a person says, you say, what is your gender? And they say, I am a cat self. It doesn't mean they're saying they're a cat. They're saying there's something about cats that they want to communicate to you that they identify with as part of their gender.
yeah.
Honestly,
Dylan
yeah.
Dylan Fuller was talking about that yesterday in side chat on Takis, which was interesting a little bit, because it's hard to wrap your mind around, really. But again, it's a piece of communication. People, I think it's it's an interesting topic.
Mm-hmm. I think really
And
it's intended more as a conversation starter than like when you might say female, male, etc. It's just a just bloop, here's the information. Whereas something with a xenogender, it's a communication of a piece of information because that can start a conversation. Like, if somebody said, I'm a smile self, I would say, what do you mean by that? What is it you're relating to about a smile, and how does that relate to your gender? And try to, get a better grasp on the whole concept.
yeah, I think it is. I think it is a question of what is the information you're trying to convey.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're trying to convey something outside of the normal conversations about gender, that's one way to do it. It kind of freaks people out. It's when you have conversations about gender, you can be as simplistic as, well, what is a woman? That kind of bullshit. That that just goes down a really weird rabbit hole. And Matt should have read The Second Sex.
Well,
he
that's
should
sort of
have
the thing.
he should have read De Beauvoir, right? It's just, come on. It just it's the whole concept of gender is a dance in a lot of ways. It's performance, it's feeling, it's all over the place, and we use language to express those things, and some people get creative with the language.
Yeah,
Nobody seriously says, I identify as an attack helicopter, because it's meaningless. It's a meaningless term. It would be particularly meaningless before the invention of a helicopter.
Yes, quite so, quite so.
I think the reason that discourse around gender is so persistent is because it is persistent. It's something that we have, but between the sexual roles, reproductivity, all of those things, that's one aspect of it for sure, but it's not all of it. I like that.
Yeah, I think that's a nice comeback. I enjoy that. Yeah, I bring it up because it's so often used in a pejorative way towards people. Oh, you're so confused. You probably think you're an attack helicopter. It also has to do with that whole nonsense that certain congresspersons spread not long ago about students are identifying as cats now and they need litter boxes in the classrooms, which, for anybody not familiar, that's a thing that's been spread around the conservative universe. It was made up by one person in a school council meeting, and then Marjorie Taylor Greene either saw the video recording or heard it from someone or whatever, and started saying it as if it were fact on the floor of the House of Representatives, and then all the conservatives picked it up.
Marge probably got a little bit disturbed by it because she herself is pretty catty. So
she can be, yes. It's troublesome. It's troublesome. But yeah, in a very real respect, we all actually do that xenogender thing. It's just the gender concepts we're trying to communicate are already prepackaged for us. Our ancestors have done the work of building into those ideas all the myriad concepts that we wish to convey with a single term. People who use xenogenders are trying to communicate something that isn't already prepackaged, so they have to do it a piece at a time. Like, what does it mean to be a dragon self, for example? Well, it could mean, a hard external outside, like men tend to wear a certain kind of suit, whereas women tend to wear something a little bit more fashionable. Maybe it's a pantsuit, maybe it's dresses, maybe it's any number of other things. There's more flexibility for a woman gender in a business setting. So what does that mean for like a dragon self? Well, maybe they only wear like harder outer clothing, like possibly heavy coats or all leather. I'm spitballing, but that's one example of what that could indicate.
yeah, you're not breathing fire.
Yeah. Although, I'm sure we've all seen fire-breathing people, carnival workers, etc. And many of us are familiar with Slim Cyborg, who is part of Purple Stream, and has been floating around the community for a little while. Slim was a carnival performer, I suppose, for lack of a better term, and I'm pretty sure I've seen him breathe fire, at least on his demo reel. So,
Nice.
could be a thing. Could be a thing. Yeah. So I mean, I do understand that one's difficult to wrap one's head around because it's so far removed from our common experience. But at the bottom, it's not really that complicated. It's just simply trying to convey an idea the same way you do with any other terminology.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, I keep clicking the wrong windows open and closed and things as I'm trying to find more additional information.
It's that kind of crazy day.
It sure is. The technology is just not behaving. Such is life, and it's not just us either. A few people have told me that their technology has been misbehaving as well. Sometimes it's different. It's not computer technology. It might be a car. It might be a phone. Though I suppose a phone is more computer than anything else these days.
It is.
Because I knew I'd have difficulty describing these sorts of things, I went looking for people who use these types of self-descriptors in order to try to get a more balanced understanding of what's going on. And so I'm gonna...
says Uranus is in retrograde. Yeah, the moon's in Uranus, etc. And so something's going on.
Yes. I mean, there's always something. I actually haven't seen... I've seen Titan here and there on the interwebs, but I haven't seen Titan over here in a while. I don't know.
He's always watching, though.
I've heard that rumor. So yeah, this is a page from Pinterest that I happen to locate. I don't want to view the image. My goodness. It's not doing what I want it to do. How rude.
Damn it.
I was trying to get into the comments sections so we could review some of the comments, and it just wasn't doing it.
Uh,
Ay, 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 ay.
we don't have anyone to pick on. It's no fun.
Yeah, it's a tricky part. Yeah, as Beamsy puts it, it's you can't really create a balance when there's a small group that want to do a thing and the majority want no part in it. It's really ultimately more about sensitivity. Like, nobody's going to make anyone use any neopronoun or xenogender or anything of the sort. You can do whatever the hell you want, just as always, like anyone can do. It's more about a person who, I'm thinking of one person in particular who actually did feel made to feel unwelcome because of people's refusal to even consider using their neopronouns. They felt rejected. They felt unwelcome in our community, and that particular person is a really nice person, and it's arrogant of us to say, I don't understand this thing, so let's dismiss this thing. Let's say it's nonsense. Let's shove it aside and call it stupid because we don't understand. You know?
Or dismiss the person because of an unusual idea. Like, wait a minute, that's ridiculous. Go away. Is kind of, ultimately it's
Yeah.
It's not a good way to learn anything about different people, different ideas, different outlooks, and stuff like that. So it's just sort of
Exactly. I mean, coming from
being considerate, being nice. That's not too hard to do, and you can hold in abeyance any judgments based on that. So
yeah,
I mean, you could say it's like it's like an American tourist going to Italy and figuring the best way to communicate is to speak slowly but very loudly to make them say, dude, no speaking English. Learn Italian or
right.
Or go to places where people do speak English. I mean, we're lucky in the sense that our my forefathers conquered the globe and therefore said everybody's got to learn our language. Therefore, it's kind of okay.
Yeah,
makes it easy for us, but one of these days, maybe I'll learn Chinese so I can speak with more people.
Yeah, that's on my bucket list as well. Although I've got Spanish first because it's a more immediate thing here in the United States. Yeah, why you no speak my language? Yeah, that actually is a really good analogy. It's like, just because we don't understand Italian doesn't mean Italian is stupid. It doesn't have the same efficiency in communicating ideas, but in other ways it may be more efficient. Like when we try to express those conceptualized pill form versions of gender that we're so used to, then you end up with people like Matt Walsh saying, well, what is a woman? And because we're so used to the shorthand,
here you
people
go. Here's
struggle.
A copy of The Second Sex by Simone de Beauvoir. Read it and get back to me.
Yeah.
Why should I read that? I don't really want, I'm asking the question, not because I actually want an answer. I want to tell you what a woman is.
And well, he feels threatened by people questioning what a man is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really,
your thought is the only thought in the universe that should matter. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, quite so. And randomly, we have a gift membership from Robin Webster that went to hey, Stacy. Cool beans. Oh. Congratulations, Stacy. I don't know if Stacy's watching right at the moment, but for anybody who is, do enjoy some happy custom emojis, which are the very, very smallest of all benefits for memberships. Yes, memberships, because portmanteaus I enjoy almost as much as puns. But yeah, it's
Speaking of Humpty Dumpty, it's like a portmanteau. That's where that phrase came from. Was from Alice.
Really?
Was from, yeah.
Humpty
Dumpty is talking. I forget the exact passage, but I can find it somewhere. It's pretty funny. Humpty Dumpty says, "When I use a word, it means exactly what I want it to mean." It's in that same conversation.
Aha.
Let's see.
Yeah,
I think I can find it.
It's fascinating to me anyway, because I'd listened to some podcasts a few years ago where they were trying to figure out where the word portmanteau came from, because there's a possibility that it itself was a portmanteau of something else, and well, what could the origin words be? And a lot of I think the dominant theory that they came up with is that there's a certain kind of traveling case, that it's both like regular luggage where you just throw the random laundry in, but also it had drawers, and also it could be a desk and various things. Yeah. And it was called a portmanteau because it was several things in one. So words where you take multiple words and combine them into one might be a portmanteau for that reason.
That's exactly right, because this is where it came from. When I use the word, Humpty Dumpty said, in a rather scornful tone, it means just what I choose it to mean, neither more nor less. The question is, said Alice, whether you can make words mean so many different things. The question is, said Humpty Dumpty, which is to be master, that's all. And Humpty Dumpty says to... speaking to Alice, well, slithy means lithe and slimy. Lithe is the same as active. You see, it's like a portmanteau. There are two meanings packed into one word. Portmanteau is an anglicized French word for suitcase that opened up into two separate bags, but joined together to be carried as one item. That's where we got portmanteau for a word that packs two meanings into it. And of course, this comes from the slithy. What comes from "'twas brillig in the I forgot.
It's all right. I often misplace details here and there myself.
'Twas brillig in the slithy toves, did gyre and gimble in the wabe. All mimsy were the burrow-grobes, and mom the raths outgrabe. Mm-hmm. Beware the Jabberwock, my son. So what we really need is a frumious Bandersnatch.
Oh yes, we the steel gray hide and the fierce eyes and the Hey there, Stacy. Thank Robin. That was a gift membership from Robin. Hey, but glad to see you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
we took a little trip through the looking glass there, remember?
We sure did.
I don't know how that came up, but wow, that's
it fits though, because that's kind of what we're doing. Like to so many people, these concepts of other genders and non-standard pronouns are kind of like going through the looking glass into a world where things make sense on their own terms, but do not make sense in terms of the world you're used to. It's very, very relevant, I It also amuses me that apparently I and many other people have been using portmanteau wrong. It's not necessarily two words that are smushed together like a German compound word, but one word with multiple meanings built into it. More like a
My
double entendre, except it's not a traditional word that's given multiple meanings depending on context and things. It's language is
my
weird.
my former partner had of course, a sailmaker and a bag maker slash cloak maker, make a lovely couple, but her shop was called Portmanteau because of the bags and because of the fact that it was it was packing two meanings into the name of the shop. She had her shop for many, many years.
Yeah, it's very efficient. Of course, if people who use xenogenders do come and see the show later, perhaps we'll end up with a new form of xenogender that we'll have to talk about in another show, where they portmanteau the gender and try to put multiple meanings into the same identifier instead of trying to describe just one aspect of their gender that doesn't fit in the normal conceptualizations of what gender can mean. They try to put it more in, and maybe that'll be good progress, because the concept of man, for example, well, what does that really mean, though? Everybody's got a bunch of preconceptions, but there's a lot of differentiation. Like we are pretty good at identifying masculine features of things. Like if you show a person a picture of a lumberjack, they might say that masculine, even if it's a woman lumberjack. If you show somebody a picture
I'm okay.
of a person, oh, there are a lot of woman lumberjacks. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But like different features, traits, characteristics, behaviors, clothing styles, all sorts of things. People can say, oh, that I envision as being more strongly affiliated with maleness or femaleness or what have you. But if the features that we're talking about aren't necessarily associated with one of the standard genders, then a person who's trying to convey that information might use a xenogender and say something like, the cat self, for example, perhaps they're trying to convey cuddly, because cuddly doesn't really fit. There are men who are cuddly and there are women who are cuddly, and I hope there are NBs who are cuddly, because I like to cuddle. But you can also be very much not cuddly and still be a man or a woman. So if cuddliness is the primary characteristic you're trying to convey, then perhaps you'd reference something that's known to be cuddly.
See where it goes, I guess. I want to make Beamsy's day. I am the Lizard Queen, Beamsy. I hope you'll address me as, I don't know, Slithy, lithe and slimy, something. It's rather amusing.
Well then. See, I think something
really
like that.
Queen. I aspire to it. I think being the Lizard Queen would be pretty cool. Like that'd be something to aim for. But I don't think it's achievable, to be honest.
There's a lot of competition among lizards to be the Lizard Queen. It's true.
Kind of like the Borg Queen.
I don't know that there's that much competition for that job. I mean, perhaps among, actors, but I don't know. Some of the comments that I was trying to get to earlier when the internet wasn't playing nice is a user named Shard says xenogenders are about aspects of an abnormal gender. A good example would be cat gender, due to the controversy that has been running around, what have you. Noun gender, as it were. When a person says noun gender, they're not necessarily identifying as a cat. You're feeling that your gender is cat-like. The descriptions of these genders are why they're so popular in the neurodivergent community. And that's another important thing to keep in mind. A person who uses a neopronoun or xenogender or any of these other things may, not always, but may be attempting to also include the information that they may be a member of the neurodivergent community, and so to not expect neurotypical behavior from them. It's a polite, subtle, and information dense way of saying I may be a neurodivergent person.
Again,
A person,
I think the topic ought to be boring, really, or funny, or as serious or funny or as boring as somebody wants it to be. I just don't.
Mhm.
I don't. It's like it's cinema touche pas.
Yeah, it should be like the rest of language. Like, language isn't one of my primary passions. Like, I don't get as excited over language as, say, history or, astrophysics. But when a person who's really into language, a linguophile, if you will, really gets going, the topic can be very, very fascinating.
Oh, that's why Dr. Josh Bowen is so popular. That's why Kip Davis is so popular. It's like, people who know those languages give deeper insight into the history of the people that developed the stories that were written in those languages that we otherwise wouldn't get, because some things are beyond translation. The concepts, particularly within languages built on triliteral roots, are things that really are hard to translate exactly and convey the same sort of feeling in an Indo-European tongue. My favorite example is atom, ADM. That triliteral root has a lot of meanings that are lost. Can mean dirt, can mean earth, can mean red ochre, can mean a whole bunch of stuff. There are a whole bunch of ideas that are centered around those three letters in Hebrew that are untranslatable. You can't. It's a pun, basically, and puns are very hard to translate, just like idioms in English. It's an idiom that's, you can't get the flavor.
Much like if you try to, it's always fun to me when I meet somebody who's learned English as a second language, and either they take a stab at using idioms or colloquialisms, and sometimes you end up with a metaphor or something interesting, or when I use one and they you don't think anything of it, you just say it because you've been saying it most of your life, and they look at you like, what the fuck did you just say? What is it? I assume that's an idiom because that makes no sense in literal terms. What are you trying to say? But yeah, I get that.
I don't know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, that's why I use the idiom. There's so many things that people say and people just understand as not the literal words, but the other idea attached to it. It's fascinating how language does that. And it also does relate in that that's sort of why I'm having so much difficulty explaining xenogenders, because there's concepts attached to the term that aren't easily conveyed, but are baked in once you understand it,
Yeah, well, one of the reasons I have a difficult time with it is because it's not part of my day-to-day experience. It's not my experience, and so that's why it's better for me to be curious, I think, as to, well, what do you mean? I mean, how can I wrap my head around what you're trying to tell me? I don't, I'm more curious than anything else as to, well, okay, that's interesting, but it's not a concept that I've wrestled with much. So I don't know.
Yeah, there's a lot to it. So I was trying to get those comments working, because that way, there's information from people who do use these and are wrestling with these concepts and trying to make things clearer. One person did bring up the it's thing, and yeah, it's pretty much only people who choose to use it because they're trying to reclaim it, because there's that dehumanization aspect. But it's not really clear whether that qualifies as a neopronoun or not, because it is something that isn't traditionally used as a pronoun, but it also is a pre-existing word, rather than where the neopronouns tend to be something that was not used for anything else before, at least that we know of. So it's hard to say. One person said that noun pronouns and xenogenders are different. Some xenogender people do use noun pronouns. That would be like cat self. But not all. The same with how some people who use noun pronouns are xenogender, but not all. According to this person, the real definition of xenogender is when you feel related to things that people normally wouldn't relate with gender, such as plants, animals, or places. Comment on that said, it's you relating your gender to said things. The gender part is necessary, otherwise people think when you say something like vampire gender, without the gender part, people might think you're saying you're actually a vampire, when you're really just trying to convey there's something about vampires that relates to something about who you are as a gender. It kind of
it doesn't touch for some. I would, I'd really love to talk to Dylan about this, because they're pretty into it.
Yeah,
Somehow
really...
it doesn't. I'm having a difficult time connecting with it, but that doesn't mean I want to stop the conversation. And I think that's the big thing. Is these things should not be things that stop the conversation. They should be things that start one. It's like, well, why? Because I hadn't really approached the very notion of what is gender from that perspective. So
yeah,
that's the kind of thing where you just, it's like, I'd rather try to understand it than just offhandedly say, well, that's ridiculous. And I was like, well, it's I don't know. I'm just curious.
It very much blurs the line between gender as a concept of traits and behaviors and expectations and individual personality. Because you can
Right.
be a gender, you can put gender completely aside and still have tons of personality and individual idiosyncrasies. So it seems like there's an attempt to try to connect individuality to a very personalized sort of gender, but I'm not sure where a person who practices it puts the line. Like, at what point is it just you being you, and at what point is it you expressing your gender?
Yeah, and that's the disconnect I have with it, as far as my own understanding of it is concerned. But again, it's my understanding, and it doesn't really, if it's something that and want to know why, I'd be curious as to why that framing is meaningful and important to that person. Really, I don't, I'm curious about that, because I'm curious about the people.
Yeah, it'd be really great to know more, because we're over here trying to decipher it from the outside, trying to have open mind and no prejudgment kind of thing. but it's still not as good as, a person who already knows and is fully ensconced in this sort of thing. Unfortunately, I was just trying to get a hold of Dylan, and alas, Dylan has turned off messaging capability on the one place I have a direct connect with them. So,
Yeah.
alas.
Yep. Well, what's going on? It's Friday.
Yeah, I can't blame them because
they're not
there's
tied
a
up.
lot of
Yeah,
hate on that particular platform.
Oh, that's too bad.
Yeah, it is rough.
I should have thought of this before. When we were talking about doing this, I should have made that connection. But I didn't.
Well, we can only think of what we can think of. I mean, I was wandering around the internet trying to find good resources for this kind of thing, and it was not easy, and I still don't have all that much, but I mean, honestly, that's the core of it. That's the neopronouns are just different pronouns for whatever reason a person chooses to use them, and the xenogenders are they're not standard genders, and that's really all it is a person is trying to convey something non-standard to you when they use one of those.
Let me see if I can shoot a quick note. I don't know whether I'll get any response or not.
Yeah,
Could
who can say? One person asks, how many xenopronouns can I use? I'm not sure if that's correct usage to say xenopronouns, but I mean, maybe. I can't say I know enough about it to say, but it feels like it's mixing the two things together. But maybe that's the point, is to mix things together, to remix ideas and concepts in ways that haven't really been done before, to explore and to see what else is possible in terms of gender and how people identify. One person says if you're talking about neuropronouns, they're just like any other pronoun. They typically don't change unless the person is fluid and uses multiple sets of pronouns, like a gender fluid person. Which makes sense. I don't know that many gender fluid people, but the couple that I have had conversations with often express that when they're on a more masculine side of things, they lean more towards more masculine pronouns. When they're on the more femme side of things, they lean more towards feminine pronouns. They usually are always okay with they because it's neutral. It doesn't assume anything. But if you know a gender fluid person and they show up looking very masculine, probably you should check first, but probably you're on good terms to use he that day. And if they show up looking very feminine, then she that day. But it's always advisable to never assume.
We all know about assume.
Mm-hmm. I need to find another comment section because there's not all that much of useful in this one that I'm looking at. One person whose name I can't pronounce says it's not so much xenogender as xeno-identity, because it's basically a description of one's gender.
That has a little bit more resonance to me, a little bit. I think because there are many things that are part of one's identity, right, that aren't necessarily tied into the concept of gender. Mm-hmm. I wonder what that interaction is that would why a person would relate it to the gender aspect of things. I mean, I think it's curious. I think it's interesting.
Yeah, that's another
It's a
fascinating
unique perspective. It's a different kind of perspective that I hadn't really considered. So,
yeah, disentangling gender from other things that don't necessarily have to be a part of gender, which has always been, even before I learned about concepts of gender in a linguistic way, and it was just elementary school level understanding of things. It still bugged me that there were so many things that were associated with being masculine or being feminine, like that whole thing about how, girls play with dolls and boys play with GI Joes, which are also
that's
dolls.
crazy.
Yeah, like that's not, as I've said before, trying to gender toys or gatekeep toys by gender is just fucking stupid, because it doesn't actually have anything to do with gender, so why is it included? So yeah, I mean, who knows where the field will go in the future, but I think it's interesting how there's so many concepts that people have taken for granted for hundreds of years being explored in so many different ways. It can conceivably teach us a lot about the way we use these parts of language.
Yeah, I think that's it. I think that, when what is the utility of patriarchy itself? And maybe it's that discussion that that things like having the ability to question it, maybe that's something that's leaking into the discourse and leaking into language. And I don't know that I don't think that's a bad thing at all. Because you can't, we got 8 billion people on the planet at this point in time, and it's been difficult enough throughout human history to get along, for our various tribes to get along, and for people to reach the notion that we are all one big tribe, we're all one big species. And in order to understand each other, to communicate with each other, to move forward in keeping the world a good place, understanding is going to be crucial.
Yeah, having a more open-minded to different ideas.
Yeah, are there irreconcilable things where one's point of view demands the elimination of another point of view? I think that some points of view ought to be eliminated. Quite frankly, fascism ought to be eliminated. Nazis ought to be. Those kind of ideas, that kind of authority, that kind of devotion to dear leader, ought to go by the wayside somehow or another, because it demands exclusion. It demands exclusion of people who are simply different, who are simply subject to the prejudices of that leader. And that's, people are too diverse, and the diversity ain't going away unless by rather nasty means. So that's about it.
Yeah, it's the paradox of tolerance, right? I forget how Titan usually put it, but
yeah, that's exactly it.
Yeah, the TLDR is, in order to increase tolerance, we have to be intolerant of intolerance.
Yeah, I mean, it's like that's a hell of a way to run a railroad.
Yeah.
You're not. It doesn't it doesn't provide material gain to the largest number of people to be exclusionary. And if your ideology is exclusionary, it's like it's also the paradox of faith. It's like you believe whatever you want. It's what you do with a belief that matters. I mean, if it causes you to run an inquisition, then that's probably no good. If it causes you to launch a 30 years war, it's probably not a good idea, because that's way more suffering and misery come out of that. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You follow?
It comes down to the whole thing about telling other people how they have to live. Like, you get to decide how you want to live. That's if other people are telling you how to live, you can't decide how you get to live. So you don't get to decide how other people get to live either. That said, there is a distinction to be made between telling other people how they have to live and asking why other people are doing the things they're doing. Because maybe if, you might assume it's dumb, but maybe there's a reason for it. Maybe you'd end up being right and it is dumb, and then you can teach them something by having a discussion, by exploring the ideas, rather than just calling them dumb and being superior. Or maybe there's a good reason and you get to learn something.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Open your ears. Open your ears and shut your mouth for a minute. Oh, gosh.
Yeah, it's tricky. Especially since, there's cultural factors too. Like the way people express that they don't understand something. It's tricky, right? Because what I'm thinking of is that particular stream that caused hurt for the other person who uses the neopronouns, that made them feel unwelcome and left out. The conversation involved people saying, I don't understand how neopronouns work, therefore they are stupid. And the person was made to feel stupid and like it's a whole thing. There's
at which point it's a you thing. I don't understand, therefore it's stupid. Well, maybe that's a failing on your part to at least try to understand, or just simply let it go, because it's not that big a fucking deal.
Yeah,
it's a big deal for the person asking to be shown, to be accorded that degree of respect and address, but it's not that big a deal.
Yeah, that's why,
or, if it is a big deal to you, maybe figure out why.
Yeah, because I was like, okay, you don't understand a thing. That's fine. You can learn or not learn if you don't want to. Nobody's going to make you. But why do you have to try to belittle somebody else's self? They're part of their identity. I mean, I've been in many situations where, people say, oh, I don't understand this whole trans thing, therefore it's stupid. I tend to use those as opportunities to educate people most of the time, but it can still be upsetting. And it struck me as like, why are these people whom are, broadly speaking, at the very least open-minded, going out of their way to be dismissive of something that they've already admitted they don't fully understand? It just seems needlessly hurtful,
It goes to there are certain facts that you don't understand, and but in a lot of, there are facts about biology you don't understand. There is male and female. That's it. But sex and gender aren't the same thing. And biology is an aggregate. An organism isn't just something. There aren't these discrete parts. If you lose a limb, that doesn't make you less human.
Yeah. And on a somewhat related note, if you have 2 arms, you have an above average number of arms. You're above average. Congratulations.
I didn't follow that one. But that's all right.
Because the traditional maximum number of arms is 2. And since there are people who've lost arms, that means the average is somewhat less than 2. So if you have 2, you're above that average.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. Hadn't thought of it that way.
Yeah.
See, this is.
And as Jimmy likes to say, jokes are always funnier when you explain them. Still, my brain is always a little weird. Okay, more than a little. And I'm still sick and on medicine and quitting smoking and etc. So
I'm probably not doing any good by smoking.
Nah, you're fine. But between this thing and my handy dandy toothpicks, it's I'm doing all right. I've only had a couple intense cravings today, and I was able to push them away.
Nice.
Right after you wake up, right after you have food, those are the hardest so far. But I'm getting through them. We're doing okay. So yeah,
good.
I'm hoping I have enough supplies. Because once I'm past the cravings and nonsense, which I know from previous experience, the first 3 days are the worst, and then the first week, and then the 3-week mark, and so forth. Once I'm past all the cravings and all that bullshit, then I can start reducing the use of the helper things and eventually get rid of them. And I hope I have enough supplies I can just get through that phase and be completely done. I still have over 100 toothpicks and
nice
lots of these little pod gizmos. I stocked up before New York State banned the flavors, so I only have one flavor, but I like the flavor, so it's a lot. I think it's 12. The little boxes come with 4 pods for these things, or at least they did when I got them. And there's 6 boxes per case, and I have 2 cases and a partial. Hopefully it's enough. If not, I'll definitely have a paycheck or 2 before I need to refill anything, but hopefully I won't need to.
There you go.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes, though. Making progress. I'll probably do exactly what I did with the actual cigarettes and cut down, and then just run myself out of supplies, and when they're gone, they're gone. Because I know from previous experience with smoking, you can't just cut down and then stop. At least for me, I had to actually run out of cigarettes. So I tried to time when I had the last one so that would be the last one. And so, yeah, so far it's working okay. But that's a whole side topic. I only mention it to explain that I'm probably in a slightly more off-kilter frame of mind than I usually am, which may be good for this conversation because we're exploring concepts and ideas that are outside of the traditional box. All right. Portmanteau
I've
origins.
quit smoking many times and never really, God damn it.
Yeah.
It's terrible. It's going to kill me, and I don't recommend it. I think it's terrible, terrible, terrible habit. Thanks for coughing, by the way. I appreciate that.
Oh, you're welcome. I guess. I need to put my microphone mute on a hotkey. I was hoping M might do it. It did not. Because like if I have something coming, like a big coughing fit or sneeze, I can usually just in time, like I did right then. But sometimes it just bleh.
Sometimes it just happens, and it's fine.
Yeah. Yep. I was editing yesterday's video before the show and cutting out all the random cough bits. I'm like, oh, why? So yeah, well, I reckon we've covered those topics about as well as I think we're likely to, unless something else pops up.
Pretty sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was an and more. I'm not sure what other and more. I'm not sure what I had in mind when I put the and more.
That's all right. This was an interesting conversation. I hope it was enjoyable for the people who tuned into it and who will tune into it in the future. And again,
yes.
If I can ever get in touch with Dylan, and maybe I'll ask them to expound on that, because they did make reference to it yesterday, and it would be an interesting conversation to have. I think.
Yeah, it'd be really good to have some insight from an insider to get a larger, clearer picture. But again, ultimately, it's not that complicated. It seems intimidating because it's different, but there's not that much to it. Pronouns work just like any other pronouns. The genders are less simple, but still not really complicated. It's just trying to convey information in a slightly different way than people are used to. So
There was some Bible thumping loony that was going on about how God is definitely male.
I've seen a few loonies do that. It's kind of hilarious to me.
And
because
I think your point about the language, the fact that article, it's like,
yeah, like I expect most scholars of ancient Hebrew would make it clear that he, in the way that it's used in the Old Testament, was used in a gender-neutral sense. It doesn't mean God is male. In fact, it kind of implies that God has no gender genitalia. They just didn't have a better way to refer to their imaginary friend. And there's a couple points in Genesis where Yahweh pretty expressly states that. So you really only get any kind of gender when you get to the Jesus part. And even then, it's not a strong theological case, but it is a strong, strong, considering we're dealing with mythology, but biological case that Jesus probably was maybe trans, because if you have only X chromosomes,
genetically, probably karyotypically, yes, probably depending on where that goes. But then again, that's only one part of the whole thing. There are many cases there at least one very prominent case within athletics where someone with AIS competed did pretty well in track and forgot her girl card. Because back in the day, you actually got a girl card based on karyotype. And prior to, I think this was before karyotype testing. it was a physical examination. It was like you get your girl card if you got girl bits. And so she went to a meet in Tokyo, and they said, okay, well, welcome, welcome, welcome. Where's your girl card? And she said, oh, shit, left it on the bureau. They said, oh, well, all right, just take this little swab, because they just introduced karyotype testing. So they took a swab, and it's like, well, you have a problem here. I'm not sure that, I'm not sure this is going to work. And it was news to her, let's put it that way. And World Athletics said, don't tell anybody. Make excuses. You're not feeling well, so you can't compete. And then just go away. And then they booted her out of competition, and she sued them, which is why karyotype testing ended. Because it's unreliable when it comes to determining, biological sex. It's insufficient.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as we frequently say, as Forrest has pointed out, there's many different ways of determining biological sex. None of them have only two options, and often they don't all agree. So what can you do?
And that's when they switched. This was just before '98, and they switched for 2000. Was it 2002 or 4? I think it was 2002. They introduced the regimen for the quadrennium for the Olympics, for the quadrenniums following, and it was based on testosterone levels to compete in the women's division. There's never been any testing to compete in the men's division in Olympic sports ever, which is interesting. But
it is. It makes me wonder.
And there has been testing as to what is the crossover between among elite athletes. Where is the crossover for T levels? Because there are a lot of very successful men with naturally low testosterone that fall into the typically female range. Like I was saying earlier, it's not one characteristic. The organism is a bundle of a whole bunch of characteristics. So we're straying a bit off the topic of pronouns and whatnot, but in that case, this young woman was raised as a girl, looked like a girl, is a girl, is in every respect. So what are you going to do? Get pissed off that she wants to be called she, her? What the fuck? It's like, oh, well, look, we just found this Y chromosome. We found this bit of Y chromosome, but it's not doing anything. And it never did throughout fetal development and throughout your growing up. The SRY gene never switched on that mechanism. So, it's just,
yep. Sorry.
It's funky, but it comes down to language. It comes down to how you're raised, where your acculturation lies, all of that. And so, and the language goes with that territory, along with a lot of other shit.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah.
Anyway. So we've been at it for what, an hour 26 minutes, or I think
something like that. Yeah. So there's the and more that that was promised on the card. It's no longer clickbait. Yeah, I mean, it's there's so much to talk about, but also with regards to these specific topics, there really isn't that much to talk about, which is sort of the point. That's why I wanted to talk about it, to show people it doesn't have to be intimidating. There's not that much to it. So yeah, thanks everybody for joining us. Thanks Steph for coming along for the ride. It's been interesting.
Yeah, and, it was boring.
Yay, we're boring.
Everybody unsubscribe to this boring channel, my boring channel. Just forget. No. I meant to say everybody needs. If you're not subscribed already to Ember's channel, please do. If you're not subscribed to mine, I'd appreciate a sub. So, and like the video, and hit the like button and share it, because everybody
tell your
needs
friends.
a little bit of a boring Friday afternoon.
That's right. And maybe they could learn something and maybe treat more people with more respect. That certainly wouldn't make the world a worse place. But yeah, we're doing things. We're trying to get Stephanie's channel up to 500 so we can get some cool memberships and emojis going on over there. So, maybe if share this video or share one of the many others on Stephanie's channel. There's lots and lots to choose from. Let's see if we can do that. And as for my channel, we're doing our 1.5K subscriber party on Sunday. So stop back for that. Yee. Alrighty. Thanks, everybody. I do appreciate all of y'all's. And I'm clicking through my buttons here. Oh, let's see. How do I want to tagline this one? Because we didn't really go into religion all that much. Just the whole thing about ancient Hebrew. Maybe I'll steal from Cirrus again this time and say, insert end of video tagline here. Good night, folks.